Well, a very good evening to you. You're watching The Full View on SABC News. I'm Criselda Lewis. If you've just joined us, welcome. If you've been watching, thank you very much for staying with us now. With 19 days to the elections, the jostle for the youth vote is on. But young people feel let down. Let's take a look in part why. Well, of course, tonight we bring you a youth debate with some of the young leaders in this country. And of course, let's take a look at some of the reasons why many perhaps would believe that the youth feel disgruntled at this particular time. Youth unemployment being one of the key issues in this election for young people. Youth unemployment, massive increase. Internships and training opportunities for young people. The ANC calling for that. And also, remove work experience as part of what they're saying. If we look at the Democratic Alliance, them saying voluntarily at this point, the ANC, remove work experience as a requirement for employment of young people, develop and implement dedicated education and training programs. That's just part of what the ANC is saying at this time. And of course, with us here in studio is the ANC's Fiso Mtweni, who is the ANC Youth League NEC member and chair of the National Youth Development Agency. And from the Democratic Alliance, youth leader Luyolo Mpiti. And we're awaiting in any moment now, perhaps in the next 15 minutes, the EFF's Vuyani Mpambo, who we understand is on his way to our studios at the moment. Of course, a former student and Fees Must Fall leader as well. But most importantly, it's about you, which brings us to the question of the day. As a young person, are you interested in voting in the 2019 election? Let's take a listen to what some of you had to say.
Yeah, this is Shona Javunda. I just want to comment on the issue of elections, which are to be done here in South Africa. Yeah, I would like to say that it is good for us as the youth to take part in this year's elections, just because we take it as the decider of our future, and we need to look at those who are capable of ensuring that our decisions will be in the right way.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Sabaka. I'll definitely vote as a young person of South Africa, because if I don't vote, somebody will decide for me. So the best way is to vote and take ANC this corrupt government out of power, so that we can have a better South Africa. Thank you.
Those are just some of the sentiments being shared by young people here on The Full View, as we're asking you, as a young person, are you interested in voting in the 2019 elections to be held in May in this country? And of course, we invited young leaders from the ANC and the DA as well, but we're still awaiting the EFF, Vuyani Mpambo, to join us here in studio. We do understand that he is a few moments away, but we'll continue with our discussion in the interim. Of course, from the ANC's Fiso Mtweni, who is the ANC Youth League NEC member and executive chairperson of the NYDA, the National Youth Development Agency, as well as the DA's young leader as well, Luyolo Mpiti. Thank you very much for joining us as we await the EFF. As we begin our discussion, 2 minutes for each of you. We're counting. There is a clock. Let me start with the Democratic Alliance. Luyolo, why should young people vote for the Democratic Alliance? Your time starts now.
Firstly, the Democratic Alliance sees young people, we hear young people, and young people indeed matter. We as the Democratic Alliance have been putting young people in councils, in legislatures, and indeed in parliament long before it was fashionable. But above and beyond that, we want to launch the National Youth Civilian Service, which is a #1 brand new program that we want to launch for young South Africans, a year-long program where young people can get skills and be able to find employment in this economy. But what we are saying most importantly is that we want to monitor outputs and not outcomes. We want to see what happens to these young people after they leave this particular one-year program. We wanted to make it likely for them to be able to find jobs in this economy that is not growing. This economy is growing at 0.8%, so it's not expansive enough to include young people. So what we are saying is we need to empower young people because they are indeed the future of this country. And the only way we can do it is if we give the requisite skills to them so that they can find jobs in this economy.
Almost right on the dot there, the ANC young person as well, Sfiso Mtweni. Sfiso,
yes.
Why should young people vote for the ANC on the 8th of May?
Well, good evening, Criselda. I think firstly, let's start by saluting the hundreds and thousands of young people who are every day on the ground, going door to door, talking to people that they must in fact vote for the ANC. The ANC has got the largest volunteer corps that is made up of young people. That is because, firstly, we have an enrollment of young people of over 3.8 million that are actually in your basic education schooling, studying for free, receiving daily meals every day, improving their lives for the better. Secondly, we've got 1.2 million young people in institutions of higher learning. Those particular young people have been enrolled through, many of them through the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, which is a scheme that has actually been created by the African National Congress. Young people, as you know, unemployment has been quite a big issue, but on top of that, we're actually sitting with over 3 million young people employed in our country, with over 4 million actually obviously looking for work, who are the first ones to actually say that the state of unemployment in this country is actually unacceptable. That is why when you started, we said one of the biggest problems that faces unemployment is the whole issue of job experience, where young people are actually kept outside of the economy. We went in, we won the battle. This year, for the very first time, over 400,000 graduates will actually benefit out of that particular scheme. But beyond that, you go into our communities, you know, our communities are better than what they were before 1994. We've got recreational facilities, we've got houses, we've got water, we've got proper roads. So generally, South Africa is, in fact, a better place.
Your time is up.
Yes.
Your time is up. Let's leave it there. Your 2 minutes is up there, Mr. Mtweni. I think, in part, in the campaigning process itself, as young leaders in South Africa, what have you found were some of the key factors that would influence young people to go out and participate in this election in 19 days? Let me start with you.
Sure. I think when you diagnose the problem that we have in this country, like I've pointed out, we have an economy that's growing at 0.8%. We have an NYDA that is failing young people, that in fact spends money and the money that it receives from government on salaries. We have young people who go to school only to die. Michael Komape, who died in Limpopo at 4 years old because there is no infrastructure. So in fact, the economy, the country is not moving forward, as Sfiso is pointing out. It's actually going back because there are 30 million people who live under poverty in this country. So in fact, when we speak to young people, these are the diagnoses that we need to point out. But above and beyond that, we want to say to young people that we need to be prioritizing the inclusion of young people into the economy. That is why, as the DA, we say we want to scrap the NYDA that prioritizes spending its money on salaries. We want to have an entrepreneurship-focused institution that prioritizes entrepreneurship in communities rather than having a workforce where we tell young people, you go out and work for someone out there. We are saying to young people, we want to give them the opportunity on the ground so that they understand that we do believe in them, we do believe in their ideas to make this economy better.
I'm sure to a certain degree, as the ANC, you would agree with the DA that some of the issues that he puts to the fore are exactly what young people are complaining about. Throughout your campaigning, what have you heard from young people on the factors that will influence them to participate in this election?
Well, I think firstly, you'd remember there were 2 registration periods. Last year, it was identified that actually young people went out with few numbers. This year, they went through a lot, through the very same National Youth Development Agency. In fact, just to correct Mr. Mpiti, the NYDA is one of the best run state institutions currently. It has 5 clean audits, and the salary bill is actually the lowest in government because it simply sits at 34%. So I don't know where that obsession comes from. But we're saying that, you see, when we talk about issues of unemployment, these are issues that actually face society as a whole. Government's role is to create a conducive environment for economic activity to happen. Now, what has happened is that most of the DA's membership, which is private monopoly capital, has actually gone on an investment strike. They admitted themselves last year in the job summit that was there and the investment summit that, in fact, they had kept their investment away. But we know now that the ANC government, having established those two summits, the investment summit and the job summit, we now have over 100 billion that is invested into the economy. Issues of job creation are actually on the rise. And in fact, the stats that you talk about every day already indicate that young people in this country have confidence in President Cyril Ramaphosa to be able to take this particular country forward.
Who's to blame for unemployment in this country? Who's to blame? And I want us to talk a bit about government's responsibility in this, because surely government cannot do it alone. Democratic Alliance, I'm sure you'd agree with me there. The private sector also has a role to play in this. Many calls have been made for the private sector to come to the party. That has not happened. Who's to blame for unemployment amongst young people?
So I think, pointedly put out, the ANC is to blame for this. I think what we need to do, and I need to correct Fiso here, we need to talk about the facts. The facts are that majority of young people are unemployed in this country. The fact is we have over 9 million people without jobs in this country. The fact is that we have young people who do not have the opportunity to access education. The fact is we have young people who go to universities and TVET colleges, receive a qualification and cannot find jobs. So what we need to say is that the ANC has made government an employer of the people, and in fact has not done what Sfiso is saying, which is encouraging the private sector to be incentivized to employ young people. But that encouragement has been there.
We've heard that encouragement several times. But if you look at the current situation with the shrinking economy, you would agree with me on that aspect, a shrinking economy, and within the private sector as well. If you look at mining, for example, you've got jobs that are being shared currently there. So how do you justify that? Yes, government has its role to play. The private sector certainly does have a role to play as well. But then where do you strike the balance?
Definitely. These are the three major industries that we have in this country: mining, agriculture, and what you've pointed out now. But what I want to say about that is that we've lost jobs, I think over 100,000 jobs in these three sectors. And why we've lost them is because foreign investment has not been coming in, because investors do not believe that we have a capable state that is able to execute the mandate that the state has. So when we say as the DA that the private sector is not being encouraged to involve itself within government and incentivize employment in our society and indeed in our economy, the problem is because they don't have the faith and the trust that we have a capable state that can actually execute the mandate to employ young people in this country. So in fact, when we speak about employment, we need to understand that we've just come out of 2 technical recessions that have taken place in this country. And the only way that we can revive this economy is, firstly, this is the plan of the DA.
Your time is up there, Leolo. Let's come to you, Mr. Mthweni. The ANC government is to blame for unemployment. Holistically, we're talking about the youth today.
Well, I think that's a sweeping statement. I want to repeat what I was saying. The role of government is to create a conducive environment for investment. Now, let's just quickly clarify these 2 technical recessions that he's talking about. These technical recessions are actually global in nature. You'd remember that in 2008, there was a capitalist crisis that led to the global meltdown of financial institutions that had a direct impact on our country. South Africa was, in fact, the first country to actually come out of that particular recession. And what has happened, and I'm saying this, surely we need to move to a point where business just comes into our country and decides at some point that, look, we're going to have an investment strike. And this is exactly what has happened. But where we are sitting now, where in 2019 we are going into the elections, there's 100 billion injected into the economy. That particular injection is actually going to be creating 1 million jobs per year. This is the plan that we have. The problem with the Democratic Alliance is that they exist to simply look at what the ANC is doing and they don't have a response. And I'll make an example why. If you look at where they say they are governing the best, in the Western Cape, it's the most unequal province in the country. In fact, they've been talking about a lot of things, corruption. They've removed no less than 10 mayors on their own who have been corrupt and having all those particular challenges. Right here in Tshwane, for instance, they've removed the mayor and took the very same mayor and made him a premier candidate. The very same mayor's brother has been stealing computers in the city of Tshwane. Now here we are sitting with a problem where the DA is not a party of government. The DA is simply a party that looks at what the ANC is supposed or not supposed to be doing and making noise about it. Now we are the only organization that has a clear plan, and as I said to you, that if you look at all your insights, every day it is young people wearing ANC shirts, going door to door, telling other young people to say, vote for the ANC.
Young people are also the face of exclusion. Black young people are the face of exclusion in education, are the faces of poverty in this country. We're struggling to get jobs, even till today, but we'll come to that very shortly. Your time is up on that. Let's come to the Democratic Alliance. One of the issues that you have put to the fore is the voluntary national service, civilian service year.
Which we already have.
Talk to us a bit about that. We'll come to you, the ANC. We'll give you a chance to speak. Let's come to you, Leon.
I think what's important in this debate is that we must remember that we're speaking to young people who are watching us at home, who want to hear what we want to do as political parties for them. So let's keep the conversation about young people. Now, to answer that question is that the National Youth Service is a simple plan. It's a year-long program for matriculants leaving high school who want to gain skills so that they can find a job in this country. Because one thing that we know about this government is that they've made young people pensioners and dependent young people. That's not what young people want. Young people want jobs. So how do we do that? We want to encourage skill development amongst young people. We want to give them that experience so that they can be able to find jobs in this country. We want to invest in SMMEs at a local level because that's how you stimulate an economy. It's proven data-wise that if you want to encourage GDP growth, at least by 1 percentage point, you start by investing in SMMEs, you start by rolling out ICT infrastructure across the country, and already by doing that, you can turn around the dire situation of our economy in this country, which unfortunately, it must be, and I feel like the ANC is not accounting to this particular issue, the fact that we have high unemployment levels in this country should be, at least at some point, you should have some type of accountability that you say, as the ANC, we must take responsibility for the fact that we have 9 million people unemployed.
You don't have accountability as the ANC. One of the issues that you've put to the fore is scrapping the work experience in order to get into the job market. Tell us a bit about that. The Democratic Alliance says that you simply don't have accountability as the ANC.
Well, the ANC is very much accountable. By the way, let's correct that particular statistics. Every time statistics are released and they judge youth unemployment, they actually start from the age of 14 to 35. Now, as you know, young people between the ages of 14 and 18 are at least at school. And just to also correct what you said about exclusion, young people are at school. Young people are in tertiary institutions. Over the last few years, there's been a very big issue about access to education. Those particular issues have been resolved. Young people are registering. Just this year, Minister Pando has just released...
Was that not just part of election year?
No.
The timing. The timing, though.
No. The timing is neither here nor there. No, the elections...
The timing of that, answer that. Yeah? The timing of that announcement pertaining to historical debt, the timing of it. It's an election year.
Well, no.
Those were accusations not made by myself.
In January, elections are in May. In January, students were on the streets saying that we can't register because we've got debt of the previous year. We went to government came and responded positively to the students. Even when the students were on the streets during the fees must fall, they went all the way to the union buildings. Government responded positively to everything that the students. That means we have a government that listens, a government that is caring, a government that is actually accessible. And I'm saying to you that indeed, all these challenges that are there, they will always be there. Government must be able to be accountable. It's a pure lie to say that the ANC government has not accounted for youth unemployment. We are the ones that held a job summit in this particular country. We are the ones that have actually gone everywhere to deal with issues of unemployment, and we came up with a plan. For us to say scrap experience as an entry-level requirement was us identifying the fact that the reason why young people are unemployed is not because there's no jobs. Jobs are there. Private companies are keeping young people outside. They tell you that for you to be a receptionist, you need 5 years experience. We said that is wrong. And we are legislating that because we are accountable and because we are a responsive government.
All right. Let's take a short break. We're still waiting for the EFF to make its way to our studio. They're running a bit late right now. We hope to also bring them into this discussion as we tackle many of the issues facing young people in this country, young people that of course, all political parties are rallying and hoping that young people will go out and vote for them in the May 8 elections, and quite a crucial vote it will be if young people do that. Let's take a short break here on The Full View. We'll continue our discussion when we get back.
We're explorers. We always have been, endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
The Zimbabwean government says it's now planning to give compensation to white farmers who were forced off the land they occupied by the government of Robert Mugabe.
For reasons of political expedience, this attempt is driven by opportunism and is bound to further deepen the political and economic crisis in Zimbabwe.
A small group of people chanted Makashule's name at the launch in Sandton City. They allegedly ripped apart some copies of the book and threw the pages around.
Clearly that book wants to divide South Africans.
We wanted to make it very clear that we stand by this book and we stand by Peter Louis Myburgh as an outstanding author.
I use my name first and foremost, that's all I heard, and from using the name I got a small loan of 8,000 rand.
I remember there is a time la sa zama kumfunela umsebenzi.
Hello again. Thank you very much for joining us here on The Full View. We're still continuing our discussion this evening talking to leaders of young people in South Africa. Of course, the ANC is joining us here as well as the Democratic Alliance. But of course, we're still waiting for the EFF to join us. They're running late. They've promised to make our discussion here, but we'll continue with that, of course, that all crucial vote for young people on the 8th of May. Everyone, all of the political parties, certainly on that ballot paper, vying for young people, hoping they will go and vote for those respective political parties. Still joining me here, of course, is the DA youth leader, Leo Lompiti, as well as the ANC's Sfiso Mtweni, who is with the ANC Youth League NEC, as well as the executive chairperson of the National Youth Development Agency. Let's talk about the issues of education. I just want to take a look at some of what we have on your screen there, which will give you an indication of some of the challenges pertaining to education in this country. Perhaps one might even ask the question, 25 years later into democracy, the face of exclusion, when it comes to education in South Africa, is still black. Why are young black South Africans still struggling to gain access to education in South Africa. Of course, if you look at what you have on our screen at this point, there's also an indication that in between the last election, of course, and this one, there's been a significant decline in the number of young people aged between 18 and 29 years old who have registered to vote. Does that speak to youth apathy with regard to voting? What are the concerns that young people are facing in the country at this time? There are only 5.6 million registered voters between the age of 18 and 29 years old. Of course, in 2014, there were 6.4 million registered voters between that particular age group, representing just slightly over 25% of the votes cast in that particular election. I think we'll move on to our discussion now. Let me start with you, Leora. There's been great concern about education in South Africa. Why do you think that the face of exclusion in South Africa, the face of historical debt, which is an issue we will raise with the ANC very shortly, why is that the face of all of that still black in South Africa 25 years into our democracy?
Definitely. I think what we've seen is that inequalities continue in South Africa, but more so, one of the key things to deal with inequalities in any country is to work with the economy. You want the economy to expand, you want the GDP growth of the economy to be strong so that the inequalities that exist in that country can at least be targeted. But what I can say is this, is that when I go home, I'm from the Eastern Cape, we still have schools that young people are being taught under trees. We still have young people who don't have the same quality education as many of our young people in different areas. So indeed we have a problem with this. Indeed we have a problem with infrastructure at schools. We saw in Driehoek when the school collapsed and kids died. So there are quite big problems that we are facing as a country when it comes to education. But above and beyond that, there's a question of access. Do we have opportunities where young people can access institutions of higher learning? Do we have a NSFAS that is working for young people, where young people don't have to wait for months on end waiting for NSFAS to pay them? Where is the free education that was promised? Where is the free education that was announced by the former president of the country? Young people are still asking those questions. So indeed, there's a huge problem that we are facing.
Your time is up. Let's come to the ANC. Yes. And just very shortly, we will introduce as well Vianney Pumble with the EFF. Thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, you've missed a part of the debate. You're running late. We continue with the discussion. Let's come to the ANC. Exclusion, the face of exclusion in this country, 25 years into democracy, still remains black. Yes. Black young children are still struggling. Fees must fall, and a host of other examples I'm able to give you. You have people, young people who are still learning under trees. You've got young children who are falling into pit latrines 25 years into democracy. What has the ANC done? Well,
I think one of the things that we need to appreciate is that post-1994, we're addressing a historical issue where education in this country was purely for a minority, which is the membership of the Democratic Alliance, and that over 90% of black people in this country were denied access to education. The majority of the people in South Africa remain black people. Now, the ANC has been addressing, we've never claimed at any point that we've actually done everything and we've covered every part of the country. But we have addressed the issue of access. I've said when I've started here that millions and millions of young people are having access to basic education. And I want to say, we condemn instances where there are still young people that still, study under trees, where young people are still falling into pit latrine toilets. We are the first ones as the ANC Youth League.
But you can't be condemning 25 years later.
What we say,
you can't just condemn.
Criselda.
These are instances where the ANC says, yes, we've done well. I don't think anyone takes that away from the ANC. Yes. A lot has been achieved. Yes. But 25 years later, young people going to the election on the 8th of May are not asking about, excuse me, I recall in the local government elections, we went to Wits University, for example, and verbatim, what young people were saying is, don't tell me about Chris Hani. Forgive me if you think I'm being disrespectful. Don't tell me about leaders of the ANC that have come and gone. What are you, as young people, going to do for young people to ensure when they leave universities, they have access to jobs? Yeah. What are you going to do to ensure that those young people who go through the schooling system don't fall fall through pit latrines 25 years into democracy?
Well, I think it's important that young people must know about Chris Hani, must know about Solomon Mahlangu, must know about Oliver Tambo. That cannot be discounted. But at the same time, I'm saying, Chris Hani, give me a chance. I'm saying there are instances where, in the Eastern Cape, for instance, and other parts like Limpopo, where schools have got pit littering toilets. We're saying that is wrong, that must be addressed. But at the same time, we've got all other 9 provinces where young people... But can I just make one more point? I'm saying there are schools built every week right here in Gauteng, state-of-the-art schools that are actually built in the townships where young people have got access. And also your point you are making, you are talking to young people in vets. In the past, young people are not even allowed to come anywhere near vets. The mere fact that young people are saying, here's the challenges that we are facing in vets, means that the access to education has actually been opened.
Your time is up. Let's bring the EFF in. Vianney, thank you very much for joining us this evening. You've missed quite a lot of our discussion, but we're on the issue of education at the moment. You were one of the students who was in the forefront of fees must fall in this country. The face of exclusion in this country is still black.
Even though we have a government that is black, it's quite ironical. Look, I think in much as we're speaking about education, education starts from, ECDs, early childhood development. We as the EFF, we are committed to making sure that we start from that point. We speak about decolonization from that level. We'll make sure that we employ more than 40,000 ECD teachers, and we'll make sure that those teachers are paid directly by the state and that their pension contribution comes from the state. Why do I begin there? It's because education, you can speak about higher education, but what you won't be able to include and have a lot of students who are black if you have free quality decolonized education at university, if you do not have kids who are already capable to be able to enter university from that level. So, for example, we say then that from the age of 3 years, all children must be attending ECDs, because at the age of 3, children are the most susceptible. So they're like sponges. They are able to, absorb a lot of information. They are able to learn at that age. So we're going to begin from there. But when it comes to basic education, we're also going to make sure that we change the ratio as it is, which is a teacher, it's 1 teacher to 40 students. We're going to make sure that it's 1 teacher to 30 students in a classroom. It's well and good to build schools, as he says that they're building schools, but there are schools that are being closed in Soweto, for example. So we're going to make sure that the classroom environment is conducive, so that these learners that we're taking to school spend time learning and not fighting for a chair in the classroom. But let me finish this point, Griselda.
Your time is about to come up.
We're going to also make sure that teachers are also taken care of. Teachers get psychological, therapy. Teachers also get assistance with their finances, but also that their pay is increased. This is to ensure that the learning environment is there, so that when they go to university, they are well.
1 second, your time is up. All right, I want to bring another issue in just very briefly here. I know that the Democratic Alliance, you've already spoken about that, Luyolo. You spoke about the scrapping of the National Youth Development Agency. Talk to us a bit about that. I'll come to the ANC and the EFF on that very shortly.
Definitely, what we have seen with the NYDA is that their priorities are completely wrong. Sfiso himself can tell you when he undertook a trip that cost about 130,000 Rand to the United States, when that money could be used for young people to actually help them to start businesses. So what we are saying is the DA, scrap the NYDA, because the NYDA is about the politically connected. It's about who is in your political party, who's in the ANC, and those are the people that are receiving support. Go around the country. I've been traveling the country speaking to young people. No young person that I've spoken to has been helped by the NYDA. So what we are saying as the DA is we're saying scrap the NYDA, replace it with an entrepreneurship-focused institution that will ensure, number one, that young people can be able to have startups, can be able to launch businesses, because they will have support, they will have the financing that is required for them to start their businesses on the ground, because in fact the NYDA is not helping them to do that. We want to focus on communities, providing jobs and empowering young people in the community to empower their brothers and sisters within those communities.
Let's bring you in there, Sfiso.
Yes.
There's no secret to the fact that the NYDA has in the past been fraught by allegations of corruption and help for pals. What has changed in the National Youth Development Agency? What help have you provided for young people?
I think firstly we need to understand what is the National Youth Development and how it came about. because youth development by its nature, it's not just one-sided, it's a holistic concept, which is also ideological in nature. But the NYDA came as a measure of the National Youth Commission and Umsobovu Youth Fund. In 2010, indeed, it had a lot of problems because of the merger and other things. But in the last 5 years, the NYDA has been the best-run state institution.
But it has been fought by corruption.
I'm saying in the last 5 years. That's what we are talking about. This year, as we speak, the NYDA has met 100% of all its key objectives. It has actually gotten a 5th consecutive clean audit. So I'm saying on that one, the NYDA and corruption, that's old news, that's history. Where we are now, in fact, he's actually lying. The NYDA, over the last year alone, has actually increased its footprint to rural areas and areas in the townships. The trips he's speaking about to the United States, for instance, he says it's 120,000 a trip of 3 people, which is quite cheap. NYDA came back with 30 million. $2 million US, where that was invested for young entrepreneurs in this country. And I'm saying, in just the last year, the NYDA has been able to assist over 1,000 brand new entrepreneurs, which have employed at an average of 6 people per business, meaning that the NYDA in just 1 year has contributed over 15,000 jobs in this particular country. So the DA closing down the NYDA is just a reactionary posture. In fact, what the DA should be doing is to call for an investment in youth development in this country, because yes, entrepreneurship is important, but there's also other things. He spoke about the National Youth Service Program. We are the ones that are running the biggest National Youth Service Program. We're targeting 1 million young people that we are actually taking into Young Patriots Program, that we're actually taking through the Social Cohesion Program. Now, I'm saying that when you look at youth development, don't look at it from one side of entrepreneurship. Youth development is very broad, it's ideological. Unfortunately, the DA is too bankrupt to consider that.
Jobs, yeah.
EFF, you're saying that you should make the NYDA more independent from government. That's what the EFF is saying?
Absolutely. We are saying that it must be independent from government, but also we're saying that it must have offices in every municipality in South Africa. But equally, we must also address the question of the people who are in NYDA. The NYDA is as good as the youth desk of the ANC. The ANC has all its cadres. That's where of these comrades get majority of their support. Even now, if you can look who benefits from there, let's follow the membership. You will find that majority of those people are ANC. You won't find EFF people there. You won't find DA people there. You won't find ordinary people of South Africa, which is the youth. The youth directly does not benefit from the NYDA. The ANC children are the ones who are benefiting from there. That is how we see it.
Yes.
So that's why we want to make it independent,
yes,
but equally accessible. Every municipality must have an office of the NYDA. Why? Because these guys are only concentrated in areas...
But was that not the case then, Vianney, at the time when your current deputy president, Floyd Shivambu, was spokesperson of the ANC Youth League, when he was funded by the NYDA for Lucha magazine?
Well, I think, you know, okay, that is fine. I'm not saying people of the ANC... No, listen. I'm not saying that the people of the ANC must not be assisted by NYDA. Understand me there. I'm saying it must be fair, open and transparent for all the youth of South Africa to benefit. There was nothing wrong, there was nothing criminal about what the Deputy President did in as far as being funded by NYDA to establish Lucha. We promote that. We want that to happen. We want more Deputy Floyd Shivambus of South Africa to emerge. But we do not want them to come as a faction of the ANC or as a group of these comrades from the ANC. We want it to reflect the demographics of this country. We want it to reflect the youth of this country. A random child of Eastern Cape must benefit. A random child of Limpopo must benefit from the rural areas. It must not just be a peri-urban exercise or people who are around, you know, these elite areas. It can't be people who come from the ANC only that benefit from NYDA.
Vianney, but the accusation then was also that it was opportunities for those who were politically connected within the African National Congress. That was the accusation that was made then, even when your deputy president was the spokesperson of the ANC Youth League. But let's take a listen. Let's just bring in some of the engagements that we've had from young people who have sent us some voice notes on this particular debate. Let's take a listen.
As a youth, I am willing to vote because I want to take the current government out, and if they win, they can win, but not with my vote.
because I am tired of being told about how there will be countless internships. I am tired as a youth of being told that children are studying for free. That time, NSFAS right here in Port Elizabeth, there are strikes going on because children are being kicked out of residences, being chucked out like they are less than human because NSFAS hasn't paid for those children. But those are the things that they do not want to take blame for. This is all through the hands of corruption. But they do not want to say that fact. What they want to tell us is how petrol will go up. What they want to say is how rates, water and electricity rates have gone up. They want to tell us that we will be experiencing load shedding today. But they do not want to say this is all through the hands of corruption. But they grandstand for us about how we should vote for them. They give us T-shirts, they give food packages. Recently, they're giving out money. But they do not want to say, they do not want to own up to their own shortcomings.
Yeah, I'm back again, and I've got this question. This question is going to the Democratic Alliance Youth Leader, if I'm not mistaken. The question is, how will your party or how will your government ensure the inclusion of youth people on economy to make our economy better? How will you do it?
Well, thank you very much for engaging with us here on The Full View. Just some of the young voices who've sent us through those voice notes engaging on this particular discussion. Of course, remember, we've been asking you what your interest is in participating in this 2019 much anticipated election on the 8th of May. Let's take a short break here on The Full View. We'll continue this discussion when we get back.
I use my name first and foremost. That's all I heard, and from using the name I got a small loan of 8,000 rand.
I remember there is a time la sa zama kumfunela umsebenzi.
This is your opportunity to hold the leaders accountable.
I was asking my question in my language.
People are dying. What are you doing about that?
There is a lockdown where there is a police with a CPF.
There are a lot of complaints. What have you done for this community?
She has devoted her life to the upliftment of children in this area.
I go into the area, collect all children to teach them. My name is Manitramali. To me, green means go.
The SABC News mobile app is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. Stay connected with the latest in breaking news. Watch the SABC News channel along with clips and live streams of all the big news events. And listen to all the SABC News radio stations live, including podcasts and much more. Simply download the SABC News app to your Android or iOS device from either the Play Store or the App Store. SABC News, independent, impartial.
Thank you very much for joining us. We've been asking you to engage with us on this debate that we're having this evening, asking you as young people whether you are excited or, if at all, you're going to participate in the May 8th election. You've been engaging with us. Let's take a look at some of the tweets that you've sent to us. Well, Pete Mayer says, beware the day the kids take over. This will be the proof the politicians fail to rule because of lies, sweet and short. Get me the president's cell number and see SA glow to wealth, peace and prosperity easy, and see young people live free. Just act. See report page 4. Tabang, thanks for engaging with us. He says, absolutely, mine is to punish the ANC. On the 8th of May, I'm a bitter young person. Thank you so much for engaging with us. They continue to send us those tweets to engage. A bitter young person. Let's start with you, the ANC.
Well, young people are bitter. There's a lot of young people that are bitter. There's a lot of young people that are unemployed. There's a lot of young people that are still faced with challenges of poverty. We're saying that indeed the ANC has done a lot. The ANC can continue to do a lot. And we continue to say to these young people that they must never lose hope in the African National Congress. We are the organization that will actually, because we have got proof. The mere fact that all of us are actually sitting here, you look around the studio, there's black people are prospering in this particular country. But while black people are prospering, there's still black people who are still on the outside. It must be our job to pull them into the economy, to pull them and take them forward. But I just want to quickly clarify just two things. I think one thing, we need to dismiss the notion that institutions like the NYDA don't represent other youth interests. In fact, in the board that I'm leading, we've got no less than 3 other political organizations. The Democratic Alliance and a young female who actually attended the interview and actually failed to even know what an NDP actually stands for. But in fact, you've got the National Freedom Party, you've got actually the Inkatha
Your time is up. Your time is up.
I'm simply saying, we're running one of the best institutions in the country. What we need and what the AFF is saying.
Your time is up, so let's be fair. Let's give everybody
else more time than me.
We've got a clock, so we have a clock. Let's come to the EFF. Vianney, your response to the tweets and some of the concerns from young people?
There is no sober young black person who would be happy in this country. All of us are angry. We are told to go and study. We get our matric results, we get A's, we get to university, we are told about fees. So there is no way that that black child could be happy with the status quo. You go and you get your degree, you go home, you get there, you are told that there are no jobs. So the government of the day has failed us. If anything, what they do, they spend that money, building their houses and splashing it in corruption. I want to ask, simply, South African black children in this country make sure that they go to school and study. And they're told that this is the way out. When they go and study, they discover that they need to pay. We are told last year that there is free there's free education. We get to university this year. We lost a child, our own fighter, in KZ and Mlungis.
Your time is running up?
Because under the guise that we will get free education. We still have to protest to get education.
And your time is up. You have to protest to get free education. Very quickly as well, they're from the Democratic Alliance. Your response to those tweets that young people had sent, as well as the voice notes?
Definitely. I think we cannot have a capable state if a state is corrupt. If a state is corrupt, it can never deliver on its mandate and programs. And that's why the ANC hasn't done that. What we are saying as the DA, quite simply put, what we want to do for young people, we want to introduce the National Youth Service Plan. We want to put and give young people skills so that they can find jobs. We want to roll out ICT in this country, nationally, so that young people can experience the jobs in that. We want to invest in SMMEs because that is proven to turn around an economy. We want to ensure that young people have the necessary means for them to become participators of this economy. And at the end of the day, young people have lost hope. They have lost hope. They can't hold on anymore. They need solutions. They are telling us that they are tired.
All right, your time is up. I want to talk about the issue of gender-based violence. Yes. It's a scourge in South Africa, which raises really serious concerns. Sifiso, many would ask the question why there is not enough or tight enough legislation to deal or send a clear message to abusers of women and children in this country.
Well, I think we've called for that. You'd remember that, in fact, we held one of the first gender-based violence summits in the country, which was actually addressed by the president. Immediately after that, specialized courts were actually opened. There was a specialized court on gender-based violence that was opened right here in Gauteng. There's one that is actually being opened in the Eastern Cape. We want to continue to say that as young people of the ANC, we remain opposed to any abuse and any form of abuse meted out to young women, meted out to women in general. We have gone out. We've got what we call the Young Women's Desk that has actually been established, that has gone everywhere, supporting victims of abuse, supporting victims that have actually fallen prey to all. And we continue to say that if those laws currently are not sufficient, let them be tighter. Let a person who's actually found to have abused a woman be treated like a murderer. That remains our view. That's a view that we've raised to the African National Congress, and we think that it's something that we're actually going to take forward as this particular government.
It may seem that sometimes we would pick on the ANC, but you are the governing party.
Yes.
We have to put these questions to you. I want to take a look at some of the graphics that we have that will give you a clear indication of some of the challenges that the country is currently dealing with relating to issues of gender-based violence. I'm hoping that will come up just very shortly. Some of the visuals that you would have seen earlier, of course, are of that summit, the Gender Summit, the very first that was held. Statistics on gender-based violence in South Africa. It says 1 in 5 partnered women have experienced physical violence by their partner, and younger women are more likely to report physical violence. For example, 10% of women aged 18 to 24 experience physical violence from a partner compared to 2% of women aged between 65 and older. So that number is quite, if you look at the age gap 18 to 24, it clearly gives an indication that younger women seem to be in a bit of trouble there. Women who are divorced or separated were more likely than any other women to have experienced physical abuse. That figure is quite alarming. 10% of women aged 18 to 24 experience physical violence from a partner compared to 2% 18 to 24. Let's come to the Democratic Alliance on that. What would the Democratic Alliance like to see? Part of what you've put on the table is that you're saying you want to ensure compliance and improved reporting on gender-based violence.
Definitely. I think firstly, this issue extends far beyond political fighting. It's an issue that all political parties need to stand up on, and we need to be advocating for it. I think I'm waiting for the day when our political parties, all of them, can stand together. What a glorious day it will be when we all decide to put the politics aside and say, as a country, as political parties, we are standing up against patriarchy and sexism in this country, that even in our structures, we will not allow such things to persist. But I think above and beyond that, when you deal with domestic violence, when you deal with sexism and patriarchy, you must start within your own organization, your own home. So what we've done in the DA, we've approved a sexual harassment policy that we are working on, and we are making sure that there is no sexist and patriarchy in our own organization. But above and beyond that, I think this issue needs all South Africans to stand together. We need to hold hands and be able to address this issue, because this is a societal issue, because we are a violent country. We have a violent history. So the way in which people express themselves in this country is through violence, and we need to stop that as a country, particularly us as men. We need to stand up. We cannot no longer allow women only to lead this narrative. We also need to be part of it.
Your time is up, Leolo. Vianney, let's come to you. Compulsory gender education and training is what the EFF is putting on the table. Do you think the ANC has failed young women and children in this country? Because if we look at the graphic that we've just showed you, we look between 18 and 24. That's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about young women and children.
Well, I do think that the ANC has failed, but also I think that it's something that needs to really go down to the domestic space. I think that it's something that we really need to tighten up in as far as even how we deal with the Sex Description Act. We need to also consider the transgender women. We must make sure that even those people are recognized in South Africa, as they are not, especially by men. So we need to make sure that things like corrective rape do not happen in this country. But that comes through education. We need to make sure that this macho, patriarchal sort of approach to issues is dealt with. One of the things that is important is that even when someone is raped, even when a woman is raped and goes to the police station, they get taken through the very same sort of trauma that they went through by the questions that they're being asked. So you need to really educate the policemen. That is the starting point. And then you need to go to the judiciary. You need to make sure that even when it comes to bail, you make sure that the bail it's not easy to get bail, because this person rapes today, tomorrow you meet them on the street and they live in the same house or live in the same street, then it's vicarious trauma that they go through. So we need to make sure that we start at that level, at that educational level.
Your time is up.
From there we go to the system. But equally, we need to have leadership that is exemplary in this case. The
exemplary,
ANC
your
has
time
not
is
been
up.
exemplary.
You're saying that accusations that the ANC has not been exemplary, Sfiso. Of course, I think within the public domain as well, as a young person who sits there, a number of allegations facing senior leaders within the African National Congress. We've had incidents raised recently of alleged sexual harassment and a whole lot of other allegations as well, allegations of rape against senior leaders within the African National Congress. As young people,
well, I think we must also realize, as we have a debate throughout, that the ANC, being the largest organization in the country, is a reflection of society. So from time to time, whatever ills that are in society will also be reflected in the ANC. But in fact, we acted. We've asked people that have been accused of certain things to step aside. Some of them have been cleared. Those who are not cleared, they're actually not holding any leadership positions as we speak. But one thing that I simply want to agree with you all on, the issue of gender-based violence can never be a political issue. When you beat up a woman, you beat up a mother, you beat up a sister, you beat up a daughter. It can never be acceptable. We don't accept it. It doesn't matter who does it. If the president does it or anybody else that does it, we think that there must be harsher sentences. We have raised it. We can see there's a move towards that. The fact that there was this summit and the fact that there are these courts that are put in place means that as a society, we are now taking the gender-based violence.
Your time is up, Sfiso. We need to go to a break very, very shortly. Our directors are telling us that now. Very quickly as well on that one, Yolo. Senior leaders within political parties facing these kinds of, as young people sitting at the back and watching all of this unfold. How do you then inspire confidence in young people to go to the polls when possibly some might even argue some get away with it?
Well, I think this is a huge issue that's facing our country. And I for one, don't believe that this can be leveled or put at the doorstep of the ANC. I think all of us as South Africans need to look at ourselves. We need to pick up the mirror and point it at ourselves. Well, how are we teaching our children? How are we raising our children? How are we commodifying people's bodies in this society? How are we looking at different ways in which genders come together? So those are the things that we need to do. We need to look at the home. We need to start at the home and teach our kids already from a young age how to treat a woman.
Your time is up, Fuyani.
Well, I think one of the most problematic things about this conversation is precisely because we're all men in this panel, and it should have been the other way around. I think that, well and good, these guys can be hugging and kissing now and saying you can't put it at the doorstep of the ANC. But, he can say also that, we are reflecting society. But the idea of leadership is to change society, is not to reflect society. So when we say the ANC has not been exemplary, is that when a leader, a prominent leader, does something like that, you make an example with him. You make sure that even the people who follow that leader will never do it even in their dreams. So in a situation like this is why he can say, yeah, but we don't promote it. But equally, he says, we reflect society. You're not supposed to reflect society. You're supposed to change society. You're in the revolution precisely because you want to change society. You are in government precisely because you're supposed to change society to a better society, not the society of rapists. So the ANC keeps on telling us that it's reflecting society. It's promoting rape in this country because it does not deal with rapists decisively. So as the EFF will make sure that we deal with rapists decisively and make sure that they don't see the light of day.
Your time is up, Vuyani. We'll continue this discussion shortly after the break. But when we come back, we'll talk about whether there's a leadership crisis. Are these cabinets too old? Do we need more young people? We'll scrutinize some of those lists as well, because some of the political parties certainly seem to be making some strides in getting young people onto those lists going to Parliament. All of that coming up after the break. Stay with us.
This is your opportunity to hold the leaders accountable.
I was asking my question in my language.
People are dying. What are you doing about that?
There is a lockdown where there is a police with a CPF.
There are a lot of complaints. What have you done for this community?
She has devoted her life to the upliftment of children in this area.
I go into the area, collect all children to teach them. My name is Manitramali. To me, green means go.
It's not about xenophobia.
There are many issues of service delivery, housing, illegal mushrooming of structures.
They are now starting to move to Sandton and to submit a memorandum.
You're not going with Thursday. That's all. I will stop this march here.
When we were bending tires in the inner Alexandra, they kept quiet because now we are going where they report. That is why they are having a problem.
We feel really undermined and disrespected that he did not show up to listen to our grievances. He has grown a tendency of only serving the so-called white monopoly capital and has forgotten about black communities. Development must happen either or of all sides because we are equally Batu.
But the people here today are saying service delivery to us, we deserve it.
I use my name first and foremost, that's all I heard. And from using the name, I got a small loan of 8,000 rand.
I remember there is a time la sa zama kumfunela umsebenzi.
Hello again. Thank you very much for staying with us. If you've just joined us, you've missed out. We're talking to leaders, young leaders in South Africa about, of course, the youth vote that most political parties, if not all, are vying for in this much anticipated election on the 8th of May. Those youth leaders join us here and are sharing some of their sentiments, of course, on what some of the crises are and how each of their political parties plans to resolve that if they emerge from that election, of course. But let's continue, gentlemen, on the issue of leadership in South Africa. Many complaints, I guess, about young people not being represented enough within structures of your political parties. I want to start with the ANC.
Yes.
Does the ANC want young people to rise? I've seen your list. And you've got the likes of someone like Umkachwa, who was very, Nompedelo Umkachwa was very vocal as well, alongside Vuyani during the Fees Must Fall protests that we saw. But is it a little bit too late? We haven't seen much of young people rising through the ranks of the ANC.
Many young people have risen. The question was just a question of representation being placed into a quota. That's what we've done. But when you talk about Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, when you talk about Kensani Kubai, when you talk about many leaders that have actually come through, Buti Manamela, those people have actually been there in the structures, they've led in government. But one of the things that we've been saying is that the majority of the citizens in this country are young people, and therefore the leadership must reflect that type of demographic. That's why we went on to fight as young people, because there's one thing you must know. Young people don't just go in and say, we demand to sit on the table and they're given that thing willy-nilly. We fought a revolution. That's why today, you can have a 21-year-old on the ANC list. You can actually have a 20-year-old on the ANC list. Not only is Nompedula there, we also have Fasia, the young female revolutionary there. You've got a lot of people who even have a SASCO president, COSAS and all of that. So we as the ANC were actually leading by very far on this particular issue of youth representation.
The Democratic Alliance, in terms of young people representation within the Democratic Alliance, and perhaps within that you can also, does your manifesto speak to young people? Is it reaching the right places in order for young people to hear what the Democratic Alliance has to say?
Definitely, our manifesto speaks directly to young people because we understand that the majority of our population is young people. 60% of this population is people between the ages of 18 to 35. So there cannot be a manifesto that does not speak to young people. What our manifesto says is that we want to open opportunity centers like we've done in the city of Johannesburg. We've opened 4 where young people are able to go into these opportunity centers, learn how to write a CV, learn how to write a business plan, and we then connect them so that they can get those skills and the experience that they need. But above and beyond that, we have youth cafes in the Western Cape where young people have benefited. We've spent 38% of our budget, which is 48 million rand, on young people, on youth programs, to ensure that young people are part of this economy, that young people are part of contributing to what we want to see South Africa become. But more importantly, on our list, we have young people on our list from provincial to national. We've been putting young people at a national level since it became fashionable. We've had Khomela Butwa at 24 years old who was in parliament. So we are doing what we need to do to make sure that young people's voices are finding fruition in the decision-making tables.
The ANC, the EFF rather, has been very critical of what has been, because it's the governing party, of the old faces, according to the EFF, within the ANC's list. The EFF, we see much representation of young people. Your Naledi Chirwas, for example, you are also there, and quite a number of other young people as well.
Well, the average age of the EFF list is actually 35 years of age. I asked them here to beat it. They must tell us their average age, and then they will see then that their lists reflect that. So the EFF is unapologetic. There are two central driving themes, both in the making up of the list, but also of the drawing up of the manifesto. That is women and youth. So even on our list, if you go read our list, it's a zebra strip list. So you have a male, female, male, female, male, female, and in an instance where you have a situation where you must have 3 people, you will have 2 women as opposed to 2 men, right? So women are highly represented in the list, but equally are centralized. So we have an average age of 35 years, but not only that, we also prioritize women. Because in as much as we speak of the youth, the majority of the people in this country are women. So we, in everything that we do, we ask 2 questions. Are women considered?
Your time is up.
If that is yes, then we go on to the youth. Is the youth considered?
Your
yes,
time
then
is
we
up.
put it in.
Sfiso,
yes.
One could perhaps argue that the EFF could perhaps might have put a bit of pressure on the ANC, given young representation in their list. We can see, for example, what has happened at universities. The EFF has made significant inroads in leading universities in South Africa. Have you dropped the ball as the ANC with regard to that, in the context of getting young people to rise from there?
Well, not at all. I think, firstly, you must understand that the EFF is a breakaway of the ANC Youth League. So the EFF itself got birth not from the ANC, not from any mother body, but from the ANC Youth League. So science will naturally tell you that those would have been young people, and majority of them would have been young. But the point that we are raising here is that we have identified the fact that the ANC needs to reflect the demographics of society. And I'm saying that it's not a new thing. Yes, we've got a lot of young people now on the list, but it's not a new thing. We've always had very brilliant young people. Of course, some of them have fallen by the wayside. By the way, Malusi Gigaba became a minister when he was the president of the ANC Youth League. Fikile Mbalula became a minister just after he was the president of the ANC Youth League. We've been doing it. Lulu Johnson, the first time he actually went into parliament under Nelson Mandela, who was actually leading the Youth League. But on that one, that is on the one side. But on the other side, the universities, indeed, when the EFF came into the spotlight, a lot of young people actually showed. But they must also tell you that all the universities that they ran, University of Limpopo, University of Venda, students have actually kicked them out because they realized that the rhetoric that they say and action are actually 2 different things. SASCO is actually back in the driving seat of those universities.
Gentlemen, we'll come to the Democratic Alliance as well as the EFF very shortly. Let's, of course, bring you in who's watching there at home. We've asked you, of course, to send us voice notes as well as tweet us. Let's listen to some of those voice notes and what your issues are. Are you at all optimistic or even encouraged to participate in the May 8th election? Let's hear what you had to say.
I just want to know from the DA. The DA has plenty of numbers to make any challenge to put any process in parliament so that they can achieve anything that is needed by the youth, especially dejected masses, which is black people. Why they don't do that? They don't activate those powers in parliament to make sure that they care about the black people, especially the youth especially. And they are not even participating in anything that has to do with fees must fall and everything. How can we trust them now?
South Africa does not need the DA, nor the ANC, nor the EFF. South Africa needs a righteous government. So we need to vote for a righteous government. We are not voting for a party. We are not voting for a person, but we are voting for a leadership and a vision. That is the ARCO vision, a righteous government for South Africa.
The ANC continues to talk about them making plans to fight gender-based violence, right? But then they do not take any actions against any members in the ANC cabinet, or rather in the ANC itself, who have been abusive to any woman in South Africa. There's never been a case where anyone in the ANC has been charged with gender-based violence. If they have been charged, these charges are somewhat dropped, you understand? And then they end up in thin air, right? Then they are still remaining in power or in those positions even after those accusations or those cases have been filed to the police to the police, and yet the ANC continues to say that they're fighting against gender-based violence. Really? No, I disagree with that.
Is the ANC fighting against gender-based violence? That viewer says, really? His argument is that when there are individuals within the African National Congress, seemingly, from what he is saying, that no appropriate action is taken against those individuals. And of course, even though they may not have been found guilty in any court of law, the moral standing of those particular individuals who you go to the polls with.
Well, we've had individuals that have been completely removed. The ANC had a chief whip called Mbulelo Koniwe. He was actually expelled from the ANC out of the allegations of sexual assault. We've had 2 spokespersons that have been asked to actually step aside so that those particular cases can be tested. And I repeat again, one of the things that we've raised that have necessitated even this summit that has actually taken place is that as young people we said enough is enough. Whether it's inside the ANC or outside the ANC, we must deal with gender-based violence in its entirety. And I want to say to South Africans today, here's a specialized court to deal with gender-based violence. We said that particular specialized court must operate like those courts in 2010, FIFA World Cup. Let's deal with the perpetrators. And I think that's what we want to say.
The Democratic Alliance, according to one of those viewers, cannot be trusted. As far as that individual is concerned, you don't participate in some of the key issues that young people are facing. Fees Must Fall was one of the examples.
Sure. I think the first thing that I want to start off with is to say that our vision for this election campaign, and indeed for South Africa, is one SA for all. And we are doing something that the ANC and the EFF are not doing, which is trying to unite South Africans, regardless of color. We are saying that whether you're white, black, colored, or Indian, you have a home in the DA. And that is the message that we are taking to young people. And it's not true to say the DA was not involved in Fees Must Fall. DASO was involved in numerous universities there. Might not have been leading those protests, but there were young people who were involved. And I think it is a bit too far or too extensive to say that one particular political party contributed to Fees Must Fall. I myself was part of Fees Must Fall. I didn't lead Fees Must Fall, but I was there for the protest. I was there doing the sit-ins. I was there at Lutuli House. But I'm not going to claim that struggle and say it was mine alone. I participated and I gave my best to it. What we need to know, South Africans and young people watching me at home today, we are saying as the DA, we believe that the project that we are doing is one of the hardest. It's the hardest project that the ANC can't do, that the EFF can't do, is to unite people. That's what we want to do.
Vuyani?
Well, we don't want unity for its sake. We want justice. I don't think that he can run away from the question about the representation that they have in Parliament. It's true that the majority of parliamentarians that are in the DA or the representatives of the DA are male and white. So for the majority who he agrees that are black, what is the message that they are sending? They're simply saying to them that white people are supposed to think for us, that everything must be decided for them, for us by them, that white people still remain the thinkers and we are the doers. So you can then send the minority to be the majority in making laws for the majority. So it doesn't make sense. That's why I think that he needs to go back and reflect, and he must find himself a membership of the EFF and belong where his color is. Secondly to it, you must remember that if you deal with the question of gender, it is in doing, not in saying. the ANC has not decisively dealt with the question of gender. You can't say people must go to specialized courts when they tell you that when we go there, we do not get a treatment that tells us that this case is going to be resolved. Majority of the cases that are not resolved are gender-based violence cases. So that means that the ANC has not committed enough resources, but also has not thought about a way out of this situation. So that's why we must tighten the legislature and make sure that we educate even the ANC out of government, and we make sure that the government of South Africa is a government that cares about women and transgender bodies.
Your time is up, Vianney. We'll take a short break here on The Full View. We'll give these leaders of these political parties one last chance to tell young people in South Africa why they should vote for them on the 8th of May. Stay with us. We'll be back very shortly.
On Trends Travel, we bring you a full guide on all things lifestyle related. With so much to discover, we give you comprehensive reviews of places to visit, music, travel, and food. We also explore the arts, whether on or off stage. All this and more, be sure to tune into Trends Travel, Saturdays at 5:30 p.m.
This is the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial.
When news happens around the world, we will bring it to you. We will keep you informed. Each day, every day, our news team digs deeper, getting all the facts to provide comprehensive reports to what's important to you. We cover all corners of the globe. SABC News, independent and impartial.
Well, we're just about to wrap up this discussion, talking to the leaders of young people in South Africa, different political parties, the ANC, the EFF, as well as the DA, on what they're promising young people. I'm going to give you 3 minutes each. Final. Why should young people vote for you? I'm going to start with the EFF because you were late.
Okay, that's fine. Well, we're the only organization that has a firm commitment towards free quality decolonized education. We're the only organization that understands that in order to empower the youth, you need to give them land. For example, if you want a res at a university, you need to pay for it. We are the only organization that says there will no longer be rentals, because that will be under, the land will be nationalized, and therefore no one will have to pay rent. That the residences will then belong to the university. Secondly, we're the only organization that is committed in making sure that all the children at the age of 3 go to school at that age. We also make sure that all children go to school, but also make sure that the children or the parents of those children, if they don't take those children to school, are criminally charged. That is the second point. We also are the only organization that is committed to land redistribution. We are the only organization that is committed to the expropriation of land without compensation. We are committed to making sure that the majority of the people who get the land are women in this country. We say 50% of the distribution of land must go to women. They must be considered. Women are the majority in South Africa, and women must be the first to benefit from land redistribution. Women must be considered first in the participation in the economy. We also say that we are going to move South Africa from from being a primary sector economy. That is to say, we're no longer going to just be the miners, but also we're going to move towards processing and beneficiation. That is to say, the gold of South Africa will not just leave the country, but also will move it towards manufacturing. That is to say, if we have gold, we're going to process it, make earrings and so on, but equally that will increase jobs in South Africa. And the people who are going to benefit from those jobs are going to be the youth in the majority, women in particular.
1 minute left.
We are also going to make sure that in South Africa, the majority or rather, we're going to make sure that the government of South Africa is held, the government of the day is held accountable. We're going to make sure that we eradicate corruption in its entirety. We're going to charge and arrest all corrupt politicians.
Your time is up. Democratic Alliance, your final say. You have 3 minutes.
Firstly, I'd like to say that the DA is tried and tested. We would like to thank the ANC actually because they've congratulated us on having the lowest unemployment rate in the country, and we appreciate that. We want to say to young people watching this is that, number one, we have launched opportunity centers in the city of Johannesburg where young people are able to access and build their skills. We have youth cafes in the Western Cape where young people can be part of the digital economy because that's where our economy is moving to. What we want to do is start to inculcating a curriculum in our schools that speaks to our economy 5 years, 10 years from now. Our plan is quite simple. We have a plan to grow the economy by 3% in the first 2 years of our government. How are we going to do that? We're going to increase funding for SMMEs at a local government level. We want to roll out ICT infrastructure throughout the country, and that is proven to increase GDP growth by at least 1 percentage point. What we want to do is we want to launch the National Civilian Youth Plan, where we give young people skills to be able to find jobs in this economy. We want to work on the 3 biggest sectors, manufacturing, mining, and agriculture, so that these sectors can grow in terms of jobs, but also that South Africans can manufacture their own goods, that South Africans can manufacture their own resources. So that is why we want to encourage that industry. But also what we want to do is look at agri-processing, because if we want to innovate employment, if we want to innovate job creation in this country, then we need to be looking at areas in which we can grow our economy and make sure that it is growing. Above and beyond that, I want to tell young South Africans that the DA sees you. You matter, and we hear you. Why do we say that? Because when we sing Nkosi Sikelel' i-Afrika, it is because we believe that each and every young person in this country needs to be part of this country, needs to be part of this economy, needs to feel like they belong. And right now, young people are hopeless. Right now, young people feel like they're not going to make it. Right now, young people feel like they're not going to survive. But what I'm saying to you at home today, we have a plan to make sure that in the first 2 years, every home will have a job, that in the first 2 years, we will ensure that every South African in this country can feel like they belong. That is why we say One SA for All, because we see whether you are black, white, Indian, colored, we do not care. You are part of this country, and we want you to know that.
Your time is up. The ANC, your final chance, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I think firstly, we'd want to extend an apology to all young people of the Western Cape, particularly young people in Khayelitsha, young people in Gugulethu, in Nyanga, who live in squalor, who live like rats because of the Democratic Alliance government. We are going to reclaim the Western Cape back into the hands of the African National Congress. Life for ordinary South Africans has improved for the better since 1994. We've got over 16 million people on a security net that cushions them from poverty. We've ensured that over 4 million kids today have got access to school, they've got access to school feeding scheme, they've got access to school transport system. We want to expand that. We're building a school every week because we want young people to have access to further education. Not only are we building schools, we've introduced smart classrooms where young people get tablets, where young people can be able to have touch boards and all of that. But at the same time, the TVET colleges in this country exist in the townships. We have expanded access. All the students there actually study for free. We're no longer talking about creating free education. We have created free education. Yes, it has had its problems, but we have opened access to 1.2 million young South Africans to access free education in this country. We are going to expand that. But beyond that, we want to say that the ANC is the first to actually identify where it has challenges and actually deal with those particular challenges. And we want to say that as the polls are saying, as all the by-elections are actually showing, that people of South Africa have got renewed confidence in the African National Congress. President Cyril Ramaphosa is capable. He's going to take South Africa forward. And I like the fact that my friends that are sitting next to me here, some of them are talking about holding the government of the day accountable, because they understand that the only government that can be in South Africa is a government of the African National Congress. We want to say to young people on the 8th of May, let's go out in their numbers and let's continue to show everybody in South Africa that the ANC remains the only home for South Africans. The ANC remains the only organization that has changed the lives of black people for the better. And we want to reach each and every South African, and we indeed grow this country and take it forward.
Are you convinced by the discussion that we've had here this evening? Of course, the three top political parties, of course, engaging with us here. But of course, it's all up to you as young people. On the 8th of May, what will you decide at the end of the day? Thank you very much to our guests for joining us, engaging with the young people ahead of this much anticipated election. I'm Criselda Lewis. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and you enjoy your long weekend. Good night.